Hello world, this is Americana and I am your host, Willie Montague. Here is not the script they feed you, not the headlines they twist. Here we dig deeper. We uncover the truth they hope you miss. If you're done with the spin, hungry for real, you found the right place. You are watching Americana. All right, you guys, we have a very exciting episode for you. We're going to be talking about Nepal youth uprising, Gen Z politics, the next power players, and then to bring it all home, Gen Z's financial future stolen by politics. But we, of course, is going to do it with some special guests. Later, we'll be joined by two guests, Javin Gordon and Zoe Duncan, the Gen Z duos. So lots coming up on this episode, but before we get started, drum roll, please. It's time for Willie Steak. As you all know, this is the time where I get to rant, and in this Monday, we need a rant. Truth is in the silence. We talk too much. We listen too little. Promises float in the air. Dreams die quietly. People suffer in plain sight. No one stops to notice. We chase the loudest voices. The small ones hold the answers. Look closer. Speak softer. And most importantly, act louder. Change starts where no one's watching. So we will bring on the president and vice president of Central Florida Young Republicans, Javin Gordon and Zoe Duncan. Welcome to Americana.
Thank you for having us.
All right, I'm excited. This is good. We got two guests, y'all, out there. So we're getting ready to take a trip all the way to Nepal. Nepal Gen Z rose up when the government banned social media. Protests spread, dozens killed, thousands injured. Young people exposed corruption at the top. It's a reminder, when youth are silenced, politics turns deadly. So, turning to you guys, what do you think about this Nepal uprising with the Gen Z, literally like 1% overthrew the government? What do you think about this?
First and foremost, we base our judgments a lot on law and order, and some of the things that we saw don't necessarily sit right with me, as much as I agree that they have the right to peacefully protest, and the fact that they discovered the corruption should have been exposed, but I was a little disheartened in seeing that they had destroyed and done a lot of property damage, but at the same time, I do see their frustration, and you can see that the government took it back after a couple of days, so that kind of goes to show exactly who might have been right or wrong in that scenario.
And Zoe, do you think with silencing social media that this is a modern form of government censorship?
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, they lost over 26 social media platforms, and for our generation of Gen Z, social media is such a resource, and it lets us connect with outside our own country, own communities, own government, so we see what's going on out in the world. So the ability to not access that information through social media and also not connect with others is definitely censorship to those people.
So this is a question for both of you. We can start with Zoe with this. Again, what do you think, how powerful is Gen Z in your eyes? You both are Gen Z. How powerful is Gen Z in what's coming in this next, especially with the midterms coming up? How powerful is the voice of Gen Z?
Absolutely. I think Gen Z has the power to make waves with social media and what they're doing involved in our communities. We're involved with the Central Florida Young Republicans, and we see so many youth want to get active through social media and just spread the word of what's going on. So I think it's going to have a big impact coming up in the upcoming elections and just seeing what happens in the future.
Same with you, Javin. What are your thoughts on that?
So in light of the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we have seen in Turning Point and in Young Republicans, huge number changes. A lot of Gen Z has had conservative feelings and felt like they wanted to voice their opinions, but the scales have been tipped. Unfortunately, we have reached a turning point. Unfortunately and fortunately, and just over the last, I want to say, week and a half, we've had a 50% jump in our membership and in donations. So I feel like our generation is awake, we're focused, and 2026, I think it's going to be a strong push from Gen Z. My apologies.
And that's going to be great. So, Zoe, could we ever see this same thing happen in America? Could America ever see political leaders put similar bans under safety? Now, I don't believe we're going to see this under the current administration. I always say that. But I do believe, we got 3 more years left with Trump. Do you think we could see some of the same uprising come from our own Gen Z here in America?
We did have that incident with the TikTok earlier. Recently, we had that where TikTok went away for a little bit, and the uproar that we had about that was just, minor into the scale of what was happening in Nepal. But I think it gives a lot of insight of how important these platforms are. So I don't believe that this is something that's going to be impacting the U.S. But since Nepal is also a democratic republic, it's just interesting to see it coming from something like that. So it would be interesting to see what happens I don't think it's going to happen with the administration, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Yeah, because I believe this shows the power of Gen Z because, it's to see 1% come in and just take over. And I saw some of the videos and I'm like, wow, this is insane. So why are corrupt elites so threatened by Gen Z voices? That's a big, powerful question. Why are the corrupt elites so threatened?
I think we're do you want to handle it, Javin?
Go ahead, Zoe.
Well, I think Gen Z, compared to other generations, we're very outspoken about what we believe in. And I don't think Gen Z is necessarily as afraid of the consequences of what their opinions have. So they're just super blunt with what they are saying. And so I think that threatens a lot of people, because you don't have as much as that from previous generations. Millennials. Millennials are more outspoken, but Gen Z is just out there.
Yes.
To add to that, I would like to say that the access to social media that we have in our generation first open doors for quick access to information, quick distribution of the truth. And I think that's scary for any politician, corrupt or not. It really shows them that the truth is easily shared, and our generation is at the forefront of making sure those things get out quickly.
So now, do you see this as a mirror? Like what we see what happened in Nepal, do you see it like a mirror where there's so much frustration just with political systems overall? And so we're looking at this and saying, wow, this is just really what we are just experiencing, this frustration with politics, period.
Yeah, 100%. I think I wouldn't necessarily say we're mirroring them in this exact same issues, but we're just built up with frustration from our governments and not being able to have access to the things that were necessarily promised to us as we were growing up. And that frustration is just built over, and it's bubbling over. We're at a pinnacle and a turning point in those kinds of things.
It's interesting you mentioned that, the things you were promised, because we're going to get into that later on, talking about the financial piece, where it is. So real quick, as we're getting ready to go to a commercial break, should America and other democracies be standing by and joining in with these protests? And not necessarily, and I want to clarify this, protests are not necessarily bad, it's when you become disruptive, because we need it. We need to be able to speak out. So do you think that other democracies should be able to come in and join forces?
Yeah, 1,000%. I'd say, I think every country's specific political issues are unique. So I'm not sure that we would be arguing for the same things, but I think as a general standpoint of Gen Z just standing for their rights, we all should be getting alongside that.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right, so that we had an amen there. Well, this is definitely a treat because we have two guests that's up here today. And so we're talking about Gen Z overall. That's why I say it's a special episode, because we need to hear from our Gen Z, because they are definitely the voice of today. But we have to take a quick commercial break, y'all that are out there watching. So when we get back, we'll have Javin and Zoe, and we're getting ready to talk about Gen Z and the political and the next power players, because they are definitely uprising. So don't go anywhere. You are tuned into Americana. All right. Hello, social media family. Thanks for staying with us. Oh. Media family, thanks for staying with us during this commercial break. Don't forget to follow us on all platforms. And remember, you can catch us right here Monday through Friday at 6:30 p.m. on Comcast Xfinity Channel 1623. We have a question for you today. Is Gen Z cooked? That's their terminology. I just had to throw it out there. So as young people say, in other words, is there any hope for the Gen Z? Leave your answers and your thoughts in the comment section below, and let's get back to the show. Everyone, welcome back to Americana. We're getting ready to have a continued deep conversation with, as I say, the Gen Z duo here. We have Javin and Zoe. So Generation Z isn't waiting for permission. They're shaping the political landscape now, born roughly between 1997 and 2012. They're using social media to organize, advocate, and push for change on issues, from climate to racial justice. But nearly 1/3 of them, being 32%, are actively engaged in activism on social justice, higher than millennials at 24%. So here we go. What drives Gen Z to engage in political, just period? What drives Gen Z to drive into the political spectrum from the past generations that we've seen?
Zoe, you can take this one if you want.
Okay. Well, I think Gen Z is driven to go into politics more just because we've been raised seeing the news on social media. So I think we had access to events at, news at such a young age that people just felt more likely to get involved.
Javin?
Yeah, I'd also like to add that a lot of Gen Z has stable jobs now, and we are paying taxes, trying to purchase our first houses, and we're trying to navigate the issues that were bestowed before us, and a lot of people are getting involved and waking up because of this.
So you would basically say that you guys are having to step into some definitely accountability and responsibility a lot quicker than probably millennials and Gen X and those before. And basically that's what you're saying. You got responsibility, and the bills are just as equal as it was for the other generations. And now you need to know where your tax dollars are going. and that's true. And
yeah,
that's,
I wouldn't. I feel like a lot of the main issues I'm hearing from people in my generation are, people will say, well, you should be saving your money to purchase a house, but we're dealing with inflation rates that just don't compare. The dollar is just not the same for our generation.
And we're going to talk about it, actually. So stay tuned for that part, because I'm going to bring that home. So how is this we just was talking about social media, was just talking about Nepal, so we're going to bring this back, but we're going to match it to two. How is Gen Z influenced by all of this social media and with politics? Because you see so much where it's misinformation, disinformation. So how do you think Gen Z is influenced by their political ideologies through social media? Zoe, we'll pop it to you.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I think it depends on the content that they're, receiving from social media. I mean, because I know it's just individualized, you have the algorithms on social media. And so depending on what people are seeing, you can get a completely different narrative of what's going on in the world. And I think it's definitely shaping people's political views and even dividing our country.
Yeah. Javin, did you have any feedback on that?
No, I think she hit it right on the head, honestly.
So I have a question for both of you, and we'll start with Javin this time. Which issues matter most to Gen Z and why?
That is an extremely good question. I think in America, for Gen Z, these issues are evolving. I'd even say statewide, they're kind of niche and specific to that. I can say for Floridians at the current moment, a lot of young people are focused on property taxes, and that being the elimination of that, maybe even a homestead issue, or excuse me, a homestead process that would help us be able to purchase our first homes. I'd also say one of the main issues that we're focused on right now is the ability to have free speech. From a conservative standpoint, in light of everything we've seen, we feel like a lot of us who are politically motivated and have opinions are being persecuted, or we're afraid to speak our mind because there just isn't room amongst other Gen Zers or other people with different opinions. But we are now actively fighting back for our rights to speak our mind.
I like that. Zoe, did you want to add anything with that? Because that brings it all together. But Zoe, did you want to add anything with that?
Absolutely. I mean, I completely agree with freedom of speech would have to be my top issue for Gen Z. I think that's just overarching. I mean, you see social media being banned in Nepal, but it's right here in the U.S. as well. I think it's important for Gen Z to express their opinions.
Amen. I think we
If
all
you don't
need
mind,
to
I
be
have
able to.
one other thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry. And another thing that I think Gen Z should be focused on is AI in the workspace. I have a huge concern for people not being able to get jobs in the future due to the fact that AI is taking over and eliminating a lot of these process eliminating jobs. So for me, a main focus, and if I could preach to anyone in my generation, pay attention to the local AI bills in your state and make sure that they're not affecting the workforce.
Oh, that's powerful. Okay, we're definitely going to have to bring it back for that one. So we're getting ready to move on to the final topic of today. We're going to be talking about Gen Z and finances, their future stolen by politics before they even were able to get here. So Gen Z is drowning in debt, stuck with low wages, and locked out of home ownership, as Javin was just talking about. But in Washington, both parties play games. Bailouts for corporation, gridlock on student loans, no urgency on inflation. The result, a generation losing trust, not just in the economy, but in politics itself. You guys, now we're going to just talk about, as we was talking about finances, what is happening? Why is it that Gen Z cannot go out there and necessarily see the dreams, the American dream that we talk about so many times?
I think a huge issue for Gen Z right now is going to have to be student loans and how our education system is set up. I think that's impacting the amount of debt that they're incurring, and as well as their ability to get into the workforce. I mean, some universities are having degrees that cost so much money and they're not beneficial to getting into the workforce. So I think if they addressed the issue with education and student loans, it might help Gen Z being able to access better jobs, get more resources, and just have better finances.
Whew, that was power punch there. All right, Javin, what do you have to say about this? Because student loans is definitely a problem. So is it something that needs to be reformed instead of a bargaining chip, instead of and make it a priority? Because right now it's a bargaining thing. We saw it from the Biden's administration till now. What do you say about there being a student debt reformation?
I'm not necessarily in the mindset of eliminating student debt across the board, but I do think the parties need to put this as something that needs to be at the forefront if they want to continue to receive votes from our generation. on both sides. I think the Republican Party has had a great approach to it, but at the same time, we need something done, and we need something done ASAP.
So I'm glad you said that. So on both sides, both parties, do you feel young people have the right to feel portrayed by both parties? And this doesn't, let me clarify to help y'all. This doesn't mean they're saying that they're coming against no party. I'm just saying, do you think on both sides that they feel portrayed as young people as whole, not just you two?
So personally, there you go. You said not just you two, but I can count on my hands how many times the Republican Party has stood up for sensible fiscal conservative policies, and the waste from the Democratic Party that we've experienced and that I was born into has genuinely crippled the dollar and any chance my generation has had at making their dollar stretch. So I do think both parties have a little bit of blame when it comes to pressing the idea, but when it comes to the actual policies that were put in place that are affecting us, I blame the Democratic Party for that.
Ooh, sound like, Jan, we need to put this in a Hallmark card and send it to everybody for Christmas up to D.C. so they can get some things changed. Real quick for both of you, as we're getting ready to conclude here, how do you think this economic anger will shape the 2026 and 2028 elections? Zoe? Javin?
No worries, I got you. So I heard you say something earlier about is Gen Z cooked? We are cooking. We are probably one of the most well-informed generations via the access to the internet. And because of that, it is very hard to confuse us, bamboozle us, or make us be led astray. In 2026, you're going to see a political revival from young people. And I hope that it is well documented throughout the nation how many people are getting active now, before we even hit the election cycle.
Whew. Well, thank you. Thank you, Javin. Thank you, Zoe, for joining us here on Americana. Folks out there, this has been a thrill of a ride today. We took it to Nepal and all over the place, but mainly focused on Gen Z. So that's a wrap for today's episode of Americana. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, only here on AFRO TV. Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep showing up. Have an awesome Monday, and God bless you.